for the first time ever, we could say freeze warning and it not be any type of analogy, illusion, iteration. I'm going to bet that everybody listening has been in some sort of warning currently over the last few days. It's been freaking cold. That's why I got the hood up. I'm freezing my butt off, even in my own house. The studio's got a lot of windows. It's an old house. We're making it through, though. But let's jump it back to the getting a little chilly on the plains, literally and figuratively. That is what's been happening across the board today. And that is what we're going to talk about on this episode of the Auburn Daily Show. With us, as always, we got our guy back, Pat Barnes. If you listen to the show, you already know who he is. He lives in infamy. He is the fighter of all bad takes on the internet, Auburn's Batman, Auburn's Hall Monitor, all the titles. Pat Barnes, welcome to the show, as always. And here's what we'll jump right into. Kind of order operations. We're going to acknowledge this crazy sports weekend Auburn had. We're going to hit up the crazy dub that they had in Vanderbilt last night, the Auburn men's basketball team. And of course, I think we're going to clap it out with the main event of the episode. Talk about where do we think that Auburn football has upgraded, whether it be with the roster position groups and also the coaches, because we've actually gotten some movement and we had to postpone this episode 2 days because of the chatterings. So, Pat, how you feeling today?
I'm good, like always. Memes. I've had a little bit of a rough sinus infection, so it slowed me down a little bit. You may be able to tell the difference in my voice today, but we're gonna power through because I'm always down to talk Auburn football and Auburn sports.
Well, before we get too far into powering through, I just want to mention that if you do have a sinus infection, there is zero clinical proof that a rage room will do anything to make it feel any better. But maybe, like, emotionally, if the sinus pain is just frustrating you, you should go check out Opelika Rage Room. Or if you happen to be in Birmingham, they're the location, Birmingham Rage Room. They are the sponsor for the show. Want to thank them for sponsoring the show as always. Whether that be you had a bad day, you're happy, maybe you're just a Bama fan and you've lost the entirety of your roster and you need to go break stuff. Maybe you're an Auburn fan and have a sinus infection. Whatever it is, it's a blast. Go check them out. OpelikaRageRoom.com, or if you're Birmingham, BirminghamRageRoom.com. If you don't know what Rage Room is, I mean, definitely need to go. Literally exactly what it sounds like. Get a break, a whole bunch of stuff. It is a blast. You can book on their website. And of course, tell them whether you go to Birmingham or the Opelika location that you heard about them on the Auburn Daily Show. They will hook you up with some extra breakables on the house. But like I said, just mention that you heard about them on this show. I want to thank them as always for the sponsorship. And let's get right on into it. So first thing, Pat, I'm sure you heard there was a phenomenal sports weekend in Auburn this past weekend. Had a gymnastics, had a men's basketball, and a women's basketball. Don't get too many just three-peat sporting events in Neville Arena. I was at all three shooting, and I'm just going to say they were all three absolutely electric. Sellout or near sellout crowds at all of them. Women's basketball set an attendance record, almost 8,000 people. Beat the defending national champions of LSU in a game that, I mean, the roof was blown off. And the cool part is that atmosphere, just like from a recruiting standpoint, like it's not just men's basketball anymore. It really is overflowing into everything. Student sections packed. Men's basketball showed out for LSU. And then the women's gymnastics team faced off against a national championship caliber Kentucky and had an incredible meet there too. Really funny that Kim Mulkey even blamed or said there was a factor of the loss that the women's team had against Auburn because they went to go support the men's team the night before. And I think she said something along the lines of it just zapped their energy and morale, which, like, to me, I think is even funnier because it's like Bruce Pearl kind of helped beat him by the transitive property there. Just insane that she said that on record. Absolutely hilarious. Auburn is back. Couldn't start the episode without shouting out that incredible weekend. And of course, I'm sure you watched the game last night against Vanderbilt, correct?
I did. I've watched every Auburn basketball game so far this year. Not the whole games, but I've watched every one of them. And since we've gotten back in the SEC play, I've watched every minute of the game so far. And I'm so impressed with our basketball team as a whole. It's early. This may be the best team we've ever had under Bruce Pearl, I think.
Yeah, so like I said, before we get into the full breakdown of what's happening with football roster and the transfers and the new coaches and the departing ones, I think it would not be right if we did not shout out this basketball team. I know we've been super distracted with what has now bled over into portal season. I don't think we even know what the dates mean anymore. It's kind of like, whose line is it anyway? Yeah, the points don't matter. Transfer
They're
portal.
guidelines.
Yeah. I mean, the dates don't matter. Just, is it 5 days? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 30 days as a coach? Is it this or that? Just, does eligibility? I mean, Robbie Ashford's at South Carolina now. Like, can you transfer
Thank
multiple
God.
times? I mean, it's just like, we don't know. And we think we know. And then just, we see a tweet that just absolutely breaks that down. So it has most definitely hogged the content lately. And by no means has it been not interesting content. But alas, we don't want that to take away from what this basketball team is doing. So I think you said it. And this really could be one of the best under Bruce. And here's why. And I was kind of bullish on this team. Now I look back, like, was I booging or was I really onto something? I'm just going to say I was onto something. And you really are seeing a true 10-man roster that is producing. You saw last year when the bench came in, there was a drop off. I mean, when you were seeing the 7 through 10s come in, it was just like, oh, buddy, buckle up. We just got to survive these 5 or 6 minute stretch till all the guys rest. At this point, I'm going to say it, hot take, agree or disagree. Auburn's bench is a top half SEC team as of right now.
I agree. Well, have you seen the stat? And I don't remember the organization that put this out or what the numbers were, but there was a stat going around Twitter last week that Auburn's bench, Donaldson, KD, Baker Mazzara, Chaney, and Cardwell are the most efficient 5-man lineup in America.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Probably
That's
retweeted
crazy.
and put it out there. It is nuts. I mean, legitimately, it would just be like, I would just like to see start the bench for the first 10 or 15 minutes of a game and just see what happens.
No, why would you mess up the juju?
I mean, it was a
That's
hypothetical.
silly.
We don't really do that, but I'm just saying, if you did, I would be hard pressed to think there would be zero drop off from just like the productivity, and we see it when they sub in.
I think them being subs is part of the reason they're doing so well, because they're better than everybody else's second guys that come into the game. And I don't think they'd have the same effectiveness if they were starting out on the floor together.
Well, we saw it against A&M, LSU, and even Vanderbilt here, kind of late in the second half when the gap started narrowing a little bit. And then Auburn would just put the foot back on the gas when the bench guys are in there, just because the other team's getting worn out. I mean, LSU got it.
You heard Bruce say it today. I mean, it was either today or yesterday. I was listening to an interview with him, but by his own admission, the bench is a much better collective group of defenders than the starters are. So I think that's part of the reason too.
And I think it's a fair point. I mean, you look at just how tenacious KD is out there. You look at, Trey goes without saying. Dylan has been playing very consistent, physical basketball. I think you couldn't. Chad Baker Mazzara is by far just the golden ticket that nobody expected.
He's saucy.
Out of all the transfers, you can go look back and see he was being talked about probably the least. Everyone's kind of wondering like what his role was really going to look like as far as the minutes, and just came out of nowhere to you circle like he's legitimately one of the best players on this team across the board. And then of course
there's so many things that have gotten better this year, and I'm sure you were probably about to hit on the same thing, but just the group of players that seem like they've improved so much from last year to this year. Like when I look at Dylan Cardwell, he's almost a completely different player. It seems like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's killing teams in the paint on the defensive end. He's every single thing. If there's a ball bouncing around the rim, that dude's flying up there and jamming it back in almost every single time he's on the floor, it seems like.
Yep, they're working on cutting down the turnovers, and they're playing smarter, taking smarter shots. I mean, KD especially, that was a huge thorn in the side last year when he would just pump it up and Tommy Hawk it up there. Now, I think the only one that's got to work a little bit more on I'm not going to say the shot selection. I haven't seen anything just bad, but just got to start dropping a little bit more is Aiden. Sometimes he's taking him a little bit too deep now.
Yeah, that I noticed that last night. I was like, hey, ease up a little bit, brother. When you're taking them like immediately crossing the logo, just jacking them up there.
Yeah, get the look. I mean, I'm glad he's did it when they're up, and I think they will start dropping. I think he's a guy that's going to be a huge. If him and Denver can really get that part of their game going, where they just become like sharpshooters from deep. It's their Auburn is. I mean, they may already be, but the even bigger problem for
Yeah.
everybody that they're going to face. So huge deal for this team. 10 deep, all playing, not seeing hardly any drop offs when guys come in, just from an average standpoint. Even Cheney have a bad game, then he'd bounce back, have a really good game. And same with some other guys that may have a bad game, they bounce back and have a good one. So the averages are playing out very much in Auburn's favor. And then, of course, we cannot forget to mention before we go to the next subject, Jalen Williams
Yeah.
finally living up to that potential. Bruce
My
Pearl
man.
said he's a do what?
This is my man. I mean, you know me. This has been the guy I've been championing since 2020. Every time I remember watching him play as a true freshman, you could just see his athleticism pop when he got in the game. So I've been begging for this guy to play to this level for years now.
And I think we knew the potential was there. And I mean, even Bruce said after Jabari left, the quote, and a lot of people like, is it coach speak? Is he trying to sell him to stay? What was the deal there? He said, we really feel like we could build this team around Jalen. And then last year, just he didn't quite take that step consistently. And everyone was just kind of like putting their head down and just like, how we're really looking forward to seeing him take the step. Is it going to happen? And then this year, I don't know if we're 100% there yet because we hadn't gotten deep enough in SEC play, but from what we're seeing so far, he's showing that he is that guy and he can be that guy consistently
I'm starting to feel real good about it. I mean, it's been about 5 games in a row now where he's played at an elite level, I would say.
on both sides of the ball.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is it's been happening both ways. And the good news is too, and I mean last year they really dealt with, especially with Broom, if they got in foul trouble, if Broom or Flanagan or somebody was in foul trouble, I mean it was just like, or sorry, Broom, Jalen or Flanagan, if any of them got in foul trouble, it was just you were sounding the alarms. And now with how deep the
Yep.
team is, you can really spread that out and not have to worry about that. And that's a strategy. And I think you saw Houston really well, actually, sorry, that wasn't Houston that capitalized on it. Alabama capitalized on it. Houston did the opposite. But just getting guys in foul trouble, and Auburn just didn't have the answers for them because they couldn't play the guys in the minutes that they needed to. So it completely changed the strategy of rotation, and you just don't have that this year. So gonna shout the fellas out, gonna shout the team out. Exciting to watch. If anybody out there, I'm sure everybody out there is paying attention, but if you're not paying attention to the Auburn men's basketball team, buckle up, check them out, buy stock now. Leading the SEC, them and Alabama are the only two undefeated teams, and I think Alabama is fool's gold. That is from a book bias standpoint, but I think that's also just watch it, the discipline, the lack of defense, how close they've been doing it. I think whatever high they're riding on there is not going to last too much longer. And everybody else, the SEC is beating up on each other, and Auburn's consistently winning by double digits. So big thing. Let's move on to talk a little bit of football, Pat. And we're going to talk a little bit about what upgrades. I'm gonna let you take this one here. But what upgrades do you think you have seen that Auburn has brought in so far? And we'll just start this with offense. We'll start with coaches, and then we'll kind of go down players. And you tell me, and we'll just kind of keep parameters. We think we got upgrade, kind of to be determined, lateral, or potential as of right now net loss because there's still movement that can happen on the portal and everything. So this will be kind of what it looks like going into 2024 season.
Well, offensive side of the ball, I think you've got 2 upgrades for 2 different reasons for the 2 coaches that have moved on. As far as offensive coordinator goes, well, really 3, I guess, if we're going to count it this way. Hugh Freeze is probably going to be your offensive coordinator if you ask anybody but Lane Kiffin next year.
Yeah, don't ask Lane.
Yeah, don't ask Lane. But I think we already saw this past year that he did you could tell the games he was calling. And it was much more a much more efficient offense, a much more creative offense when he was running the show. So I think that's a big upgrade at play caller. We've talked about that a bunch already. I think, and I'm sorry, Auburn faithful, this is going to hurt some feelings here. I think Derek Nix is a huge upgrade over Cadillac as a recruiter and as a coach, just based off all the as a coach is based off the additional 10 years of experience he has in the SEC,
Yeah.
as well as he was coaching other college teams before Ole Miss as well.
And that's
And
not
then
a dig at Cadillac, just so everybody out there knows. Like,
it's just the fact of the matter that he has a much better recruiting and a deeper experience to draw from. So I think that's a big upgrade at the running back position. And then I think Kent Austin is a net upgrade as a quarterback coach, not necessarily because he's that much better of a pure quarterback coach than Montgomery was, but I think he's going to be a lot more cohesive with Freeze, and I think you're going to see a lot more cohesive system with Ken Austin being the quarterback coach, and I'm sure he'll have a lot to say in the play calling and the entire paradigm of just the offensive scheme as well. So I think that's a big upgrade.
now, so obviously Montgomery's out, and
Right.
they've got Ken, and there were a lot of rumors of what Ken Austin was going to do. Was he going to potentially take that and Freeze, and then obviously you've got Nix in there. So here's one angle I want to add to this. And just kind of throw my 2 cents in here. And I think with how much turnover there is in college football, not only with coaches, but with players, there's a word that we get tossed around, and I've said it, and we're going to say it again. I think it's a very important word. And it gets said a lot, but I do not think it is overplayed. If anything, I think it is underplayed now with all things becoming equal and the parity and the NILs, but culture. It can come and go so quickly. And with just how intense everything operates, if there's a bad egg in there, it can spread really quick because you're dealing with a lot of personalities, you're dealing with a lot of money, and you're dealing with a lot of celebrities. So if that culture is not just dialed up to a 10, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter how good your coaches are, doesn't matter how good your players are, doesn't matter how good this guy's resume is, that one, whatever. If folks are not working together well and effectively, it's if they cannot work as a team, the coaches and the players can't play as a team, it's not going to work. And there were a lot of rumors. I don't want to address anything specifically because we were not there. I think there's enough out there that's reported on that folks can read between the lines, but we're not going to delve into those weeds. But there may not have been the best relationship, plural, with some of the coaches on the inside. I don't think we're going on a limb to say that. And I'm thinking one thing that'll look a lot better with this will be with these additions, Hugh Freeze can make it the way he wants it. Because like it or not, he is the head coach. It's got to be his way or not. And I've always been consistent with that. I was consistent with that with Brian Harsin. Was it good? No. But I will just say I'm always going to believe that. So I'm not going to state my same opinion that I had. Hey, if it's Harsin, he's going to do it his way, sink or swim, and not give Hugh Freeze the same benefit of the doubt. Hugh Freeze needs to build his staff his way with who he wants it. Him and Nix work together at Ole Miss. He has a working relationship with him. He knows how they work. The culture buy-in, I think, is going to even be better there. Then obviously Kent Austin's been around with him for a while. On the offensive side and the recruiting side, I think you're going to see a lot better things to come there. What's your opinion on that, Pat?
No, I completely agree with you. Just in business and in any type of organization in general, I think the right way to run it is to hire somebody and everybody under that
Pat, you with us?
person. So any coaching staff, and I said the same thing. I was there with Harsin with you. I didn't like Harsin as a head coach, but I agree. The only way this is going to work to its fullest is if you let the coach hire his own people, because he needs to be comfortable with who he's working with. He needs to be able to trust them to go out and do the type of things that he needs to do off the field. The head coach needs to do off the field. He needs to be able to trust his coordinators to implement his vision. And I think what you're going to see this year is Freeze is going to be able to trust Austin and Nix a lot more with that than he was able to with the last group of coaches we had in there.
Yeah, you can't meddle in here. And there was rumors, and I'm not going to say these are and aren't true, but you always kind of hear them, especially when a guy leaves. Oh, that wasn't his hire. That was forced upon him. Whatever. True, not true. Is it somewhere in the middle? Who knows? But what needs to be known is nobody out, and I think we're both saying the same thing here. No one outside of that head coach needs to be making or having any kind of influence on the hire who's brought in. This guy's an alum. This guy's has been a head coach before. He's been a SEC coordinator. You need to get him. Now, okay, I respect your opinion. We'll interview him, but he's not going to be in. He's not going to have any sort of leg up over anybody else. And I think now we can officially kind of say this. And you see a lot of recruiting. You see a lot of coordinator turnover, first year coaches, and same deal with assistants. And hopefully this one, I mean, you saw it with Harsin first year. He burned a lot of his. I must have said that the wrong way there. A lot of his guys came and went very quickly, and then he got in quote his guys in there, and then that just crashed and burned even faster. So let's just hope the similarity there of Hugh Freeze can get the guys and the staff how he wants it, and hopefully this is absolutely how he wants it. There is the opposite of what happened with Harsin, and there's no crash and burn, and we actually see it get done. Keywords here, the right way.
Correct.
Let us jump to some of the players that Auburn has had jump on offense since we had last recorded.
Okay. The biggest pickup as far as a player goes in the offseason is that left tackle we got from Mississippi State. I think it was a week ago now, Percy Lewis. And like we talked about last week, what this guy does for you, he does two things. He brings in a quality SEC left tackle who has proven it in games last year. He was the second highest graded pass blocking lineman. You upgrade that left tackle spot on the offensive line. But you also kick in Dylan Wade to guard. And Wade is a good offensive lineman, and his body type is more suited for guard. And you're upgrading a guard spot by moving Wade there. So already going into next year, you're looking at a better offensive line than you had last year because you're essentially getting a 2-for-1. Yep, that's right.
And the kicker there is that you've got the entirety of spring to implement this. You're not having to move Dylan Wade at the last minute.
Right.
They can go ahead and be just getting this rocking and rolling, all that. So, yes. So what we're safely saying there is offensive line, especially with that addition, should be a huge – and the offensive line was better last year than it was the year before. But if you can stack that and make it better than that, I mean, especially with the rising star that you've got with Connor Lew in there.
Right.
As of now, you still got Tate Johnson, who could be a rock depth piece in there. Maybe
I think the big thing is that other guard spot. I mean, you got to feel good about at least one of Jeremiah Wright, Muskrat, and Dylan Cinda being able to take that job by the horns. Like one of those three is bound to be a good guard in the SEC. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and like I said, you got some depth in there too. So it's not like it's just, we got our starting five, then a true freshman.
Miller's the one I worry about because he did struggle a lot, especially in pass protection last year.
And
I think a lot of that, yes, false starts too. But I think a lot of that was just being raw and not playing as much football as some of these other guys have. I'm hoping maybe this is more hope than expectation, but I'm hoping we see a big jump from him in year two because that's really going to be the piece.
Thornton has been an incredible addition to this team.
He's a good coach. I agree.
He's a good young rising star, and I believe it was I'm trying to remember who it was. I believe Zach had him on and Locked On Auburn. It's one of the linemen. I'm drawing an absolute blank, and he basically just mentioned that that Thornton was just an absolute just from a technique, learning the game, learning the position, just a mastermind for the O-line. And just what he was able to, just how he's able to coach and teach these guys, just
right
in making them better. And obviously, I'm no offensive line coach. I'm no offensive lineman. I can't necessarily even begin to delve into the technicalities of that. But I think we can all know that they are there, and having a guy that can do that on top of the recruiting is going to be huge. So obviously, I hope he can stick around and really show a big year 1 to 2 improvement. So what we're getting at here, just keep it trapped. Offensive staff, we're saying an upgrade. I'm saying that the key of that upgrade is going to be the culture being better at the very least.
Agreed. And then obviously the other big change on offense this year is going to be the receiver room, primarily because as of today, the 4 true freshmen you're bringing in, plus Robert Lewis from Georgia State. I mean, let's be honest. We've dogged that group all last year. There's really nowhere to go but up at this point for that group. Yeah. And what you saw out of Cam Coleman Under Armour Week, where he was, according to the people there, was truly pushing to be the number one overall player this year. I think he steps on the field immediately, is a really good receiver in the SEC. I think Thompson's going to take a little bit longer, but I think by the end of the year, you're going to see some really good stuff out of him too. But you're bringing Jay Fair back, you're bringing Caleb Burton back to get another year under their belt. You've got an experienced guy in Robert Lewis coming in who had 900 yards at Georgia State last year, so you're expecting good things out of him, be that steady presence. And then you still got Ryan Williams you're battling for with Texas and Alabama. Hopefully we'll land him in February. And if we do land him, he's a day one starter.
Now, weird question mark. Has Javaris Johnson actually announced where he's going yet?
No. He is supposedly down to Baylor, Utah, and UCF.
But hasn't that been like hasn't that been like who he's been down to for like the last week?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I'm assuming he's not coming back at this point. Otherwise, he already would have withdrawn from the portal. I would have loved to have him back because I think he's a really good slot receiver. But he'll go one of those places and he'll be really good for him, I'm sure.
Yeah, crazy that he has not made. I'm googling it right now to make sure I just didn't miss it. But yeah, the top article from a month ago. Utah offers Auburn wide receiver transfer Javaris Johnson a month ago. So while there hasn't been any decision there, I mean, obviously Landon King went to Utah, right?
Yeah, and I think he had like 10 catches or something like that. He did not live up to the Auburn hype at Utah either. So everybody take heart with that.
That might be a fun offseason deal. We need to do a departed Tigers checkup, see how everybody else did. And speaking of, let's jump to and I'm gonna put the upgrade on the quarterback position, or just the rating there is. I mean, I agree with you. I think
Thorne has to be better than he was last year with the upgrade on the offensive line and the receivers. I don't know how much better he'll be, but he will be better.
So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, I'm going to put like a to be determined tag on it, but I agree with you. It's kind of like there's nowhere to go but up. But since it is kind of built with true freshmen and it is going to hinge on the quarterback play, to be determined. But like I said, let's be honest, it can't not by just default. It can't just really not be an upgrade. So
if he plays a C game next year, that'll be an upgrade.
So let's jump over to. I mean, there was really no action running back. Batiste coming back, so that's just. That just is what it is. And then is it Nix is you said Nix is going to be doing the running backs, right?
Yeah, he'll be coaching running backs.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, at this point, running backs are coached a little differently now than they used to be, so I'm not too worried about that. I mean, what do they say? Running backs coach is basically just a glorified recruiter.
So, I mean, it's real tough to tell somebody to run faster, be stronger. I mean, really, what you're coaching as a running back coach is pass blocking. And where to read a line and where to read the hole to hit and all that stuff.
Like a lot of agility
besides
drills.
Besides that, it's your God-given ability as a running back.
Yeah, I mean, just recruit or just have them go visit Brad Lester during the offseason, and then I think they're good. So yeah. Shout out Brad Lester and all his running back coaching he's been doing. So the elephant in the room here. There hasn't been a lot of action on this. I mean, this will probably be a whole episode. But quarterback position.
I mean, like we said, I think as far as coaching goes, I think you got to give it an upgrade in the coaching department because of the trust and familiarity that Freeze has with Austin. And he's probably not a guy that a lot of people know about, but I interact with some Ole Miss people pretty frequently. And they have really good things to say about him from his time at Ole Miss. He was Houston Nutt's offensive coordinator when Jevin Sneed was there. I don't know if you talking
about Nix?
Ken Austin.
Oh, okay. No. Sorry. I knew Nix had been there dating back that far. I didn't realize. Okay, I didn't realize Ken Austin had been there with Houston Nutt also.
So yes, he was there with Houston Nutt and was an offensive coordinator with Jevin Sneed was the quarterback back in 2008, 2009. And then he spent the next 8 years as the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL. And I think they won the Grey Cup twice. So it's not some guy that's just Hugh's buddy he pulled off the street. This guy's had a really successful career. And I think he was an NFL quarterback for a while as well. And everybody speaks really highly of him as a quarterback coach. And like we said, he's way more familiar with Freeze than Montgomery was. I think you have to consider him an upgrade.
Well, and also too, there's just if nothing else, the year two familiarity with some of these guys. Whether
Right.
it be Holden, if he sticks around, Hank Brown, Peyton, if they potentially bring another guy, and then obviously you get to work with Walker White, fresh out of the high school. Walker White's already enrolled, right? So I guess you're working with him right
He
now.
is. He's there. Yeah, and
So
he looked fantastic in the Army game too. And that's just an all-star game, but he looked better than I anticipated. So I'm kind of excited to see what he looks like in the spring.
right. So I think having just that to where it's just, hey, we're not starting from square one. We're not trying to meet each other. Like we know what we're doing. We know what we need to work on. We got the film. I know your strengths. I know your weaknesses. Now we can work to improve the strengths and lesser the weaknesses. I think that's a big thing. I think if nothing else, you said that year two jump there. We'll give it I guess we'll give it, somewhat of a, I'm not going to say upgrade might be the wrong word, but we feel good about it.
Yeah, it's steady as of today, but you can have a little optimism that they'll be better
Yeah.
there this year.
So let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball. Cause I mean, it seems like most everything for offense, and we will have a little follow up for this over the summer because some of the stuff will slightly change. Because of course you're going to lose and add guys in the spring. But for right now, this is kind of where it lands at with a more emphasis on the coaching deal because hopefully that doesn't happen. Defensive side. Let's break this down starting with the coaches.
So we do not have a defense coordinator yet. We'll have to wait and see before we give that. Here's the thing with Roberts. I think he was a really good defensive mind. I don't think any of the guys on the board are going to be necessarily a better schematic defensive mind than he was. But it also sounds like Roberts was a real pain in the butt to deal with everybody involved. And I mean, you got Keontae Scott immediately withdraws from the portal right when Roberts goes to Florida. So no telling what morale and team chemistry issues were going on behind the scenes there, where you had players simply considering to go somewhere else because they didn't want to play for that guy anymore.
Well, I think
So
let's go
I
back.
can't
Let's
help
go
but
back to the
think,
C. Let's go back to
yeah,
the C word, culture.
yeah. So from a cohesion standpoint, I think it's probably going to be an upgrade there.
Yeah,
And who
I
else
don't
have we
think you have.
hired?
I don't think we have anything wrong with Roberts. Like you said, as a on the field coach, but I think all the other stuff, and even to the links with him and the working relationship, the very bizarre. And like I said, we're not going to delve into the rumors per se, but the odd correlation between with what happened with him and supposedly McGriff,
Right.
that
Something happened on
relationship,
practice. Yeah.
yeah, that there was some professional working issues there that, and then he mysteriously was like, I'm not on the field, but I'm kind of working in the office, and just there were a lot of things that we're just gonna just say maybe weren't the best cultural deals that, and that bleeds over to other things. So probably good to reset the button there. I mean, not ideal. If he'd asked me a year ago, if I'd say, oh, we're down to two coordinators again, I'd have been like, oh, great. But if you get it right, then we're good. And there has not, or sorry, so Kelly, right? Is he going
Yes.
to officially be?
He's on. He's good to go. They haven't announced anything officially on him besides the fact that he's co-defensive coordinator.
Mhm.
And I know everybody got up in arms. They named him that, but unless we miss on Chris Kiffin and a bunch of other guys, I do not think Charles Kelly is going to be calling plays next year. And I think he's going to be co-defense coordinator, and he's probably going to be the safeties coach. I would imagine, depending on who we hire.
Right.
He is considered to be a very good position coach. And now he had a struggle at Florida State as defensive coordinator compared to what they had the years prior. So that's why I think a lot of people were kind of freaking out about him calling plays. But he has been a very good position coach at Alabama. And really, his strongest suit is he is one of the 10 best recruiters of the Southeast region in the entire nation. If you go look at his 24/7 page, the guys he's landed, it is a who's who list of studs over the last 6 years. So
Well,
it's going to be a huge upgrade in the recruiting department.
that's one thing that I think if we're going to talk about upgrades here across the board, especially with Nix, Kelly, they bring any other folks in. I mean, the undeniable truth is that the recruiting train should not stop. And that is before Nick Saban retired.
Right.
So now there's some blood in the water, and old DeBoer has not gotten anybody outside of the Pacific time zone to Alabama. might be
Well,
might be
he's kept
even
2 guys.
they kept two.
Yeah, he kept Gillespie and Freddie Roach. They're
Well, I meant
probably the
like
2 best
but I meant like who has he actually like offered?
as far as a coach.
No, I'm talking about players.
The only player I know they've offered was the dude, that 3-star tackle from Washington, which cracked me up because all I could think about was Harsin going after that receiver from Oregon immediately, and that guy did everything in his power not to come to Auburn. Every time they were like, "Oh, they're the only school left that'll take him," they go, "Oh, no, he wants to go check out Michigan now."
And then he got that quarterback coming to Alabama as well from Washington. So he's recruiting the West Coast hard. So that's great. I hope he continues that. And as I said, that just means it's even more of an open season for 2025 recruiting. So any other defensive moves on that side of the ball that we need to address before we
Yeah.
wrap this episode up?
So I can't be all rainbows and sunshine. I do think the defense is going to be worse this year than it was last year. And the biggest reason for that is I do not think we brought in a suitable replacement for Marcus Harris. I like Trill Carter. I like Gage Keys. Those are the 2 interior defensive linemen we brought in the transfer portal. I do not see either one of those guys living up to what Marcus Harris was last year, though.
Now,
So
also,
my guess, go ahead.
I just want to add, we don't know exactly what the defensive scheme is going to be either, correct?
Correct. It could. Well, let me put it this way: the guys that we're all talking to high on the board right now all run a variate. Well, besides Arnett, but Chris Kiffin and DJ Durkin run out of a 4-2-5 mainly, which is what you see most teams run out of these days. And really, the 3-3-5, everybody gets up in arms about it. But that third linebacker is just a jack linebacker. And my favorite thing I've seen on the message boards this week is everybody getting mad if we hire Arnett going to a 3-3-5. Did y'all not realize we were running out of a 3-3-5 this year? Because
Yeah, let's say.
that jack linebacker is considered a linebacker for a reason, and he dropped into coverage fairly often. So it won't be that big of a change if Arnett is the guy. So we'll see on that.
Yep. Well, those are the moves there. So I think offense we're feeling good about. Defense, probably we're not quite there putting all the pieces together yet. Still weird.
I would love to land a stud interior lineman in May, and that's a little bit easier to do than like a quarterback because you can kind of plug and play somebody there if he's physically developed.
Well, last thing. Speaking of additions, Auburn did snag for the second time ever in the modern era after Corey Grant, a transfer from Alabama.
Yeah, and I love this kid. I remember when he was a recruit, and he wouldn't give Harsin the time of day.
Yeah,
this kid was a do everything athlete. Antonio Kite, he was a do everything athlete out of Anniston. I remember hearing the stories about him, about the things he would do on a basketball court. But he is a freak athlete. I believe if he wasn't a top 150 player coming out of high school, he was right around there. He was a Charles Kelly recruit, so Kelly's already paying dividends. This guy hit the portal and came to Auburn immediately. And I have a feeling this guy's going to start at one of the outside corner spots next year because he was actually running second team at Bama last year. And I think he only played 20 snaps or so, but that's what he was listed as on the roster, on the depth chart.
Yeah, because he was behind Kool-Aid, so like that's kind of a tough spot to find.
You're not going to see the field too much behind him.
Yeah. Now, also too. Now, if I remember correctly, did you say Pritchett jumped in the portal?
No, he finally ran out of eligibility.
Okay. Did somebody hit the portal, or am I crazy?
You're talking about Elijah Pritchett.
Yeah.
The offensive tackle from Bama?
I believe so.
Yeah, but remember he's got that stuff that happened, the off field stuff he got in trouble for, like the week after he was flirting with us to come over here.
That's right. Okay. Yep.
So that shit may have sailed because of that stuff, would be my guess.
Okay. That's all kind of coming back to me now. Just kidding. But yeah, I would say they have had almost, I believe, between NFL and portal 20 mid to high 20s turnover. So that is a just utter disaster there. And I'm sure they're going to cry about it and try to get some rules changed. But
Well, I will say this: it is unfair, kind of what's happening to them. I'm not mad that they're the ones that are having to show the NCAA this is what your rules have wrought upon us. Uh, I'm happy it's happening to them, but it is unfair from the standpoint that your coach retires and all of a sudden your roster can just be picked apart at the end of the year.
yeah, to where you can't even field a team. I mean, you can't even field a team for spring practice because
Yeah,
everybody else is done. And yeah, definitely there's definitely something that they've got to. There will be. I mean, before, regardless of whatever happened with or without Alabama, they were going to be changes, and I think these are just kind of showing the glaring holes. And for hey, it would be rare, but if something like this happened, you can't allow that to even be a remote possibility, and it's kind of what it was. So that's
we
I think
had we
that's
had
gonna
a,
work.
we had another big addition we haven't talked about too. That safety from Texas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's going to be really good. He was an All Big 12 player 2 years ago. He was an honorable mention this year, just shortly on him. This guy's a perfect Jalen Simpson replacement. They play a lot the same way. He's going to be one of those center fielder safeties, coverage on the back end, roam around, pick somebody off when they're not looking. He's an excellent replacement and somebody we've been needing bad. So I think the secondary is probably not as good on paper as it was last year, but it's got a ton of potential, and it could be just as good as it was this year by the end of the year.
Well, we'll come loop back on the defense. We'll see how that pans out because I think it's safe to say they might have a little bit more coming. Obviously, they're not done on the coaching search, and then next thing we're going to be talking about is how these guys start looking like in spring. One last question though before we wrap up this episode here. Javon Reed did the bat signal. We're not done yet. Any rumors out there for what he could be referring to?
I have no earthly idea what he's got on that. So your guess is as good as mine, and I'm very he doesn't there's usually something that happens pretty close to when he does that stuff. So I don't know if he's talking about Ryan Williams or somebody else. We'll see.
Yeah, well, typically Trevon Reed does not throw that out there unless there's going to be something splashy coming. So I think we can all safely say that there has been a lot of well-deserved trust put in Trevon and the work that they are doing out there. That is going to wrap us up for today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. I want to thank everybody for coming to hang out with myself and Pat. You can find me on the Twitter and Instagram at Auburn Memes. You know it is. It is troll season. It's meme season. We're coming after these schools in basketball. So if you want to kind of join along with the fun and antics, that's where you can check it out. We're a little bit more serious tone. You know, we try to keep it a little bit more above the board while we're doing the YouTube show. And I want to thank everybody for joining us for that. It's good to have a little bit more mature outlets. But want to also tell everybody, if you don't already, subscribe, like the show, hit the notifications, check it out wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, comment, all the stuff. Helps us out a ton, helps us grow the show. The growth in the last 2 months has been incredible. I want to thank everybody for helping us do that. And then, of course, check it out at auburndaily.com. Check out the Twitter, the Facebook pages, everything they got going on. The staff is always turning out some great written content. So make sure to give them the support and love. And for Pat Barnes, you don't know where to find Pat Barnes. Say something really stupid online, he'll find you. But if you do like Pat's works, of course, just check us out. He'll be back here again, as always, next week. Want to thank everybody again, and you guys have a good rest of the day.